Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. Firstly, I would like to thank IIC for giving us this opportunity to facilitate today's discussion on the intersection of affordability and sustainability in housing. It's a very important lineup for us. It is a conversation that is not very mainstream in forums like this, and that is why we are very excited about it. I would also like to thank all our panelists for accepting our invitation. Thank you very much for joining us today. We can begin by a quick round of introduction. I will take a minute to talk about myself and the work that I do. I'm Priya. I work for Habitat for Humanity International. Habitat has its presence in over 70 countries, and it's known for its rich tradition of building houses with people. Obviously, it's impossible to build your way through the housing crisis, right? The housing, globally 2.8 billion people require comfortable and improved shelter, and you cannot build this on an incremental basis. So since almost 1 decade, Habitat has been working through its Terbiliga Center for Innovation in Shelter, where we look at the housing sector from three important verticals. One is building material and construction practices. Building material involves everything that goes into the construction of a house or a structure, that is cement, sand, brick, paint, everything that goes into the construction. Construction practice is everything from the engineering to design to labor practices. Second is housing finance system. My colleague Nupur will talk about it. And third is entrepreneurship and innovation. So we look at new innovations in the housing and construction space and its applicability to affordable housing. And cross-cutting to all of this is sustainability. While we build more structure, we know that each structure causes extreme stress on the environment, so we also need to be mindful of that. And the discussion today is curated in light of that. I would request Nupur to introduce us.
Thank you, Priya. So I'm Nupur Maruti. I'm Manager Housing Finance Systems, and I'm looking at the Asia Pacific portfolio here at Habitat for Humanity International. So as Priya mentioned, we work in three major, it's almost the entire value chain of housing where Habitat works. And our focus here on the finance part is we work with the financial service providers to develop business models which can actually solve the housing problem of the low-income households. We also have, because we understand, if we don't bring finance to the table, we are actually not doing work. So we also had a demonstration fund called Micro Build, which is a 12 years old fund now. We are at a stage where we are harvesting the fund, but it has shown that how we can push local market capital to flow into this segment. And now we are at a point where we are also launching Microbuild 2, which is again a $200 million fund, which is going to work across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And we are looking at further solutions and tapping into markets where we can further the need and push for sustainable housing products in the market, which can help in catering to these problems related to housing construction. We are also looking at targeting new segments, whether it is MSME financing or fintech players to get into, because there's a huge gap, as Priya already mentioned. And so that's about the finance work with Habitat. I would now request you to introduce you.
Thank you, and nice to be here. My name is Lavanya Prakash. I am from Climate Policy Initiative. We are a research, advisory, and consulting company. We look at climate change from finance lens. We do a number of activities, primarily come out with green finance tracking on global level as well as India level to understand that how much capital is flowing for climate mitigation and adaptation, whether it's adequate. And we also design policy, regulatory, and market solutions which can be used to accelerate capital for climate actions. Then we have different programs also which enable the hard-to-finance sectors to access capital from mainstream financiers. We run a program called Center for Sustainable Finance, which I lead at Climate Policy Initiative, where we come out with insights and thought leadership on climate finance here in India. And we also conduct capacity building programs. As we know that there is a massive gap among banks and financial institutions how to integrate climate change in their investment lending decisions, in the at the board of directors discussion level, at the strategic planning level, which is also critical. So we conduct actually building program among small size banks, large size banks, even mid-size, small size NBFCs also, how to integrate climate change in the lending and investment community.
I think so. Thank you. I am Dirinder Sani. I am principal with the Swami Fund. Swami is a part of SBI Cap Ventures. SBI Cap Ventures manages 35,000 crores in assets across 5 different teams. Under the Swami Fund, which is a 15,500 crore fund, which was set up by the Government of India in 2019. The idea was to help installed projects or projects which can be installed for the want of capital to get revived. We have so far looked at over 1,500 proposals, given approvals to over 150 odd projects. We are on the course of delivering 24,000 homes with committed capital, and overall we think we should be able to deliver in excess of 40,000 odd homes. We've been present in over 24 cities. So I've had the opportunity to see different cities, understand different regulations, see what different state governments have been doing. We've also very closely worked with a lot of home associations because they have been very critical in reviving a lot of projects. So experience has been very good so far. Thank you, Shruti.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Shruti. I'm founder and CEO of Structure Eco. So we're India's first carbon negative building material company. So we make drywall panels which are used for modular construction, could be commercial housing. We started very optimistically with housing and had to transition to commercial sector. We could talk about it later because of the compliances and the challenges. Just housing or residential segment has for a new young startup to get into. But the idea is that we work at the intersection of how building materials can address decarbonizing buildings by storing the carbon, and second is how do we make materials that are functionally more insulated, because this whole debate about climate change and where buildings and real estate comes in, we need to make buildings more passively insulated. We can't have the same amount of pressure on our active heating cooling, and that's why we believe that building materials, as Priya mentioned, one of the 3 themes, is something that can strongly impact making buildings more energy efficient. We're based out of Delhi. We work both in India as well as exports, where we sell our products that are carbon negative and more insulated.
Yeah, hi. My name is Malcolm. I'm the founder and CEO of Negron Housing Finance. We are the only fintech housing finance company in India. We empower customers to find their homes, finance their homes, validate their titles, and validate their trust, all digitally. We also have some physical betting. We are also been growing quite fast. We're growing around 3 to 4 times every year. We are also the fintech startup of the year award by ITA. We are also part of the only housing finance company which has got 100% tax benefit for the work we are doing in financial inclusion. Right now our portfolio is around 200 crores plus, and we, from an AUM perspective, we plan to be going quite fast on this. So that's a lot of work that we do is for first-time homes. It is helps in financial inclusion, and it's only for the economically weak and lower income group of customers. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Krishna. I run the Tamil Nadu's Infrastructure Fund Management Corporation, the investment manager for funds which are seeded randomly by the state government of Tamil Nadu. I wish to take this opportunity to brag about the way we work and how we work. We are in the heart of Chennai, and depending on which website you see, we are right in the fringes of a 60-acre or a 380-acre eco park. You can look upon your mobile, it's called the Adyar Eco Park. We have an exclusive access to that park. Why am I emphasizing this? This is because every day we get inspired seeing how flora and fauna can be rejuvenated. The park was disintegrated about 15 years back when efforts were made to do that. Today, most of these species which were in the IUCN Red List have come back to the park and they thrive. And all this, the lakes, the multiple lakes and the birds and the insects or the butterflies are just 20 to 100 meters away from where we work, my cabin I should say, or our place of work. So we have this as an inspiration. We come to work every day and this is what we see, and that inspires us to have sustainability and affordability and regeneration as part of our DNA. We believe that values bring value, and we believe that every investment that we make will need to have it embedded right at the beginning. And I will still talk about some of the things that we have been doing, but I wish to state that in the last, in this calendar year, the trailing 11 months, we have done close to 10 deals, or not close to 10, in fact, we have not disbursed all of them. Most of them are, 10 of them with the shareholders agreement signed, and we've been the most active investor in Tamil Nadu.
Thank you, Krishna. I'm from Chennai. I can vouch for everything that you're saying. And there's a lot of, like he said, there's a lot of lake restoration projects that happen in Chennai, and a lot of focus on sustainability. There's somebody from Affordability Capital, and she actively invests through her CSR fund in these projects. So a special thank you for that. So thank you everybody for the quick introduction. And before we get into the discussion, I would like to take some time to sort of set context to the discussion as to why we're discussing what we're discussing today, right? So according to the UN Habitat, 75% of the infrastructure that will exist in developing countries by 2050 is yet to be built. So you can understand the magnitude of that, right? And despite the growing demand for affordable housing worldwide, low-income families are underserved by the housing market. They're shut out by the income requirements of mortgages and financing sectors, and are also unable to afford high-quality building material and access to finance. Furthermore, there are also data that every single day, 96,000 new affordable and accessible housing needs to be built until 2030. 96,000 every single day to keep up with the global demand. So when we are, building our way to meet this demand, obviously you cannot ignore the impact it has on the climate. Case in point is Delhi today, right? Like we land here and you start choking because of the smog. So obviously we cannot also ignore that. There are reports that 2023 is going to be the hottest year in the history of record. So why is it that in spite of this kind of challenge in this space, and obviously with challenge is also a lot of opportunity, that there is very little conversation around this, very little investment, and the investment is as little as 2.2 to 4% of climate tech investment currently is funded towards built environment, right? And globally, the housing sector receives only 8% of global impact investment. So for people like Shruti, who is a startup and has come up with a fantastic product which converts agri-waste to building panels, who finds it extremely difficult to attract investment from the investment community. So I would like to start the discussion by inviting Shruti to talk about one, her work that she does. Second, obviously it is a sustainable alternative building material that she talked about. So can you take us through the landscape as to how do you find working in this space, and how what are the kind of challenges that you face in terms of building your venture, finding the right kind of capital to build and scale?
Thank you. So just a little bit about structure. So as I mentioned earlier, we make a panel which is 96% straw, the same straw which otherwise is burnt as stubble, which is right now happening around Delhi and can contribute anywhere between 10 to 40% of the air pollution during the peak winter seasons in Delhi. So we compress that straw with a binder which has very little formaldehyde emission to convert them into alternatives to plywood, HDS, plasterboard, WPC, any kind of dry down panel for wall, ceiling, flooring, furniture applications. So you can, in the commercial space, you can do interiors, or in the housing sector, you can build modular, full structures using other sub-load bearing supports like steel or wood frame. So those are the two ways of utilizing the material. When we started structure, which was in 2018, we, as Priya said, the market seemed like that's where the demand lies. But when we started to get into that, we realized that it's just very complicated. It's, all the startup frameworks of B2B, B2C, none of that applies to housing. There are just so many stakeholders, which is understandable. But for a young company who's coming in with a material that they are manufacturing, where it's always a chicken egg problem that if you don't have supply, you don't have demand, you can't, manufacture, you can't stock it. And when you go into the market, you realize that there are a lot of compliances, not just sustainable compliances, but standard building code compliances. And second, that housing, especially versus a commercial, the person who's owning the house is often not the decision maker. So who do you actually go and talk to? Our main problem with housing when we started off for the first year was, do we go and talk to a person who wants a low-cost affordable home, but we realized that most of it is financed by someone else. Now can I just go directly to a finance institution and convince them, because their mandate is not to support a material, it's to finance homes. So it felt like, how do you fit it? Which is why we transitioned in 2020, and from 2020 we've been doing a lot of commercial building, where that you go to the PNC, you go to the architect, they specify, the contractor will pay, and the end user, same like a house, will use that space for office or hotel, but you don't have to interact with them. But housing, the emotional investment that the buyer has, you involve them, but they're still not the ones who will pay. So I think for us, that was the reason why we had to we could not do housing at that point of time, and we realized we have to scale a little before we could even sit around other stakeholders and say, can we do test beds, can we pilot structures and say this is the price of this house versus a traditional house, and then find the financial institutions. Still we don't know how can a finance institution back a company like ours. You can't directly fund us, you have to fund the buyer who's buying the home. So I would love, because there are more people on this panel who are on that side of the table, how do you address that and get more sustainable technologies which at scale will be affordable, and some of us are already in that range of being competitive. It's not that the premium is a problem. The problem is how do you finance it with the right instrument. So that's more around our work and our relationship with the housing segment, which I still very strongly believe is where the impact is. Because if you from day one structurally make a house better, material, design, air quality, ventilation, that's what's going to continue for generations. And when it comes to investment, so for us, this traditional VCs are not that invest in this space. 2 years back,
there's so much of talk about impact.
Yes.
What is your
no, so we raised our first round of investment with a mix of 2 impact investors and 2 family offices. The family offices are offices that are into real estate, they are developers. And then we have 2 impact investors, one is Indian, one is American. So we have definitely gotten access via them. For impact investors, the mandate was the carbon footprint that we were storing and proving with the NCAs. For the family offices, it's what can this scale, because there was a commercial angle to our materials in their own spaces. So we were able to find the sweet spot with both of them, and I think that's what, at least with materials and real estate, is more than traditional VCs. I think a lot of traditional investors and family offices and impact fund has to come in. And especially at the initial stage, what really helped us was grant, more than equity. I know a lot we don't talk about grants when we're talking about capital, often on panels, but for younger companies that are into hardcore product development, where the product takes years before you commercialize, what really sustains you is non-dilutive capital. That no one will, that you can still get with being free revenue. So for us, we raised about $300,000 of grant, which helped us to get a product that paid for all the building code testing compliances, because only then you can find your first paying customer. So it's that problem. You don't have a customer, you're not going to get an investor. But for the customer, you need to be compliant, and a single fire testing for a building material in India can cost you upwards of 4 to 5 lakhs. So for us, it was grant that helped us get there from stage 0 to a commercial stage, and then it was a mix of impact and family offices. And even right now, we're closing a seed round with a strategic investor. It's not a VC. Not that we have anything against them. Picture that this is a space where the traditional distribution system, at the end of the day, once your product is a fit, you have to get into the traditional distribution system. And that is what traditional players, traditional family offices understand better. So my often, remark to other startups in this space is that maybe those are the right investors for us. For VCs, unless there's a very strong government compliance around where, where someone says 10% of housing has to be built sustainably, that's when the money will flow. It will trickle. It will be exponential. But I think we're still a few years before that in our space.
So you spoke about family offices, and yesterday there was a discussion on the family funds. Unfortunately, you're not there, and nobody talked about housing. Yeah, health tech was talked about, but housing wasn't touched upon. So, Lavanya, I would like to bring you in here. You heard about everything that should be talked about, and I want to hear from you. Do you see, when you look at this vantage, this whole situation from the vantage point of policy, you see a lot of potential in investing in solutions like this, and also do you see that in coming years there's going to be a lot more investment in the low income and affordable housing, especially with a focus on sustainability?
Yeah, definitely, why not actually. But if you see affordable housing, for example, there are a lot of subsidies are also coming in the form of electricity. When you're talking about green housing, it means that you are consuming less electricity. Okay, it is for the benefit of the government. For example, affordable households are spending less amount of energy. It is the benefit is going to the distribution company. Ultimately, the government, which is bearing the cost of energy for low income households, they are bearing the cost. So in that way, we can build a mechanism. For example, additional costs are required to build a greenhouse. Okay, that additional cost of money can be funded by on-grid financing. For example, distribution company, which is giving subsidy. For example, there are subsidy amount of 200 units here in Delhi. And several states also, there are subsidies of ₹1 2 rupees. It is less than the cost of the rest and the cost of distribution of the electricity company. And if you build greenhouses, can these subsidies be passed on to the financiers? That could be a fantastic idea. Then the key question, I think, is the performance of green buildings. Many times also they will say that, okay, it will be a green building, it is energy efficient, it will be water efficient. But as a builder or as a buyer of the house, you are not very sure, okay, how long, how it's the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 5 years, how long. Nobody is giving you that kind of assurance. For a property developer, they must be assured that, okay, I am getting energy efficiency for 20, 30 years. Somebody is giving me assurance. It means that there is an asymmetric information gap between the owner and the builder and the person who is supplying those construction materials. And it's extremely difficult to rely on the construction materials. Here the policymakers or the government or the public financiers can play a role. Can they give a guarantee? Okay, if this building, this house is not reducing energy efficiency or not improving energy efficiency by X% or not reducing the water consumption by Y%, I will keep that additional amount. So you are relying on the government, you are not really relying on any third-party construction material supplier. That could be another way. She also said about policies that are actually in the UK. There is a policy that if you are not green building certified, you cannot give it on rent. So it means that it's a penalty for you. Okay, for example, we have so many rating agencies like Kriha or LED. The government say, okay, if you are not 4-star or 5-star, you are not eligible to give it on rent. Okay, that will give a lot of incentives for the builder. I'm not talking about the existing building, which may be struggling to retrofit, they will struggle to raise capital. For all the new buildings, the government make it mandatory. Okay, why not make it mandatory? So that the developer, the property developer will invest money, additional money in building green buildings, in investing in green buildings. That's additional incentive for them. Then we are doing a lot of discussion on REITs also, and because there are also empirical evidence which suggests that the green buildings is traded at a premium. Okay, it means that people are ready to buy, ready to give a premium to the bonds, the mortgage bonds, green mortgage bonds in the financial market, because they are realizing that the default rate of green buildings is likely to lower because the income will be low, will be higher. Because the people who are going to stay in the green building, since they will realize after a period of time, okay, so I am reducing my energy by 10% or 20%, particularly in the summer season, by 30% or so. It's a massive saving for the person or for the business house which is residing in that building. Okay, it means that there is a traded market. So if there could be a green rates which can realize, which can giving a benefits to the ultimate, the originator of finance, that will get attract a lot of financial students to that.
Thank you so much. So this, a lot of points which you have raised, I think it's very important that Dr. Malcolm shares his views on this, because you're doing a lot of work in the fintech space on the housing front, making it affordable. Along with it, you're trying to, minimize this gap where there is awareness, communication gap, or maybe understanding gap to a large extent, where actually consumers do not understand about green housing, sustainability. For them, it is more like, how we can get a quality construction, quality building at low price. But you're doing a lot of work in that space. Along with it, if you can, speak a bit about the fintech model which you have, you're the pioneer, so you can speak about that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Nupur. Some background. When I said we empower customers to find their home, I'll just take one leg of that. So we have our own property discovery site called Apnagar Coach. It's the only affordable housing property site in India today. It's similar to Magic Bricks, but it's only for affordable properties from builders. There are over 2,000 builders and projects and over 2 lakh properties. What we do in that differently is that any builder who is in an affordable space can host his project in just 10 to 15 minutes from their own mobile and answer a few set of questions. We get all the data validated using data pulling. We pull out data right from GST to ITR to PAN to everything. So they give us some information and we can validate that data. We also validate their filing, their IPF payments, we also validate the company standing. We also do a technical validity of the project, where we know what is the framework of that project, which is whether it's a building or a layout. And when we are answering these projects, we have 2 things which are very unique. One is we have a project rating that everyone has. I mean, what is the type of project, what is the type of this. There are very holistic matters that come in a project rating. That everyone knows that this is a class A, B, C. We can always rank it by 5 stars, a single star to 5 stars. What we have done differently is, while we have a project rating, we also have a green rating of the project. That means that that project has to have some green space. Means it has to have place for children to play. Does it have sanitation, please? Does it have rainwater harvesting, recycling? Does it have windmill? Does it have solar water handling? Does it have cross window ventilation? Does it use any built-in material which is there? So the builder has to answer these 10-15 questions. We are validating that as right. We cannot validate using data. Sometimes you have to go and physically validate some of these. When we do that, we are finding that there are significant number of builders who have started using something. The average green rating of around 2,000 projects is around 2 stars. It's not great, but it is a start. Let me put it this way. Okay, that people are getting sensitized that I need place for my children to play. So even the customers who are the lower income group, economically weak customers, they want to see that there is a place for children to play. They want to see whether the rainwater harvesting is there. If they have solar water, their electricity bill is lesser. They want to see that the sanitation system, that the quality of the material is something that they don't want a fully concrete building. They want something which has most of the builders, they use burnt bricks, which is very, very eco-friendly. I would say 70% of the builders which we have seen use burnt bricks. Very few, maybe 30% use fully concrete. Maybe hollow concrete blocks or full concrete blocks, which creates a lot of heat in the building. So there is a movement that people are moving to eco-friendly. This not consciously. Maybe it is driven by something which are maybe more easier for the consumer. So consumer, if you go to the consumer today, economically weak and lower income group are not like carbon pollution. I would say the opposite. If you ever go to your grandmother's house in the village or semi-town or anything, you have semi-mud, laterite, all those buildings, all the wastage disposal is eco-friendly. Because now we have come to a concrete jungle, there is a movement that we need to get much more eco-friendly over there. So that is one of the things that we do. Second thing that is very important, you mentioned on credit and access to credit. You have to have a system that can validate their income through various types of methods. We use income triangulation, we use alternate data, we use traditional data, we use non-traditional data, we use utilities data, we use a lot of this data. So in effect, while we call ourselves a housing finance company, we actually a data company. We're doing housing finance. Until you get substantial data points about a customer, I can tell you this much, that we have as much as in terms of raw data, we have at least a full 12 to 13 MB of data. In terms of video data, we have 100 MB of data. In terms of pictures and all, we have 5 MB of data. If we have and GPS data and all those things, if you have that much data, you can't go wrong. Okay, it is only a question of how you can use data to get the information. I mean, it is just like Facebook doesn't know how much income you are getting or which strata, nor does Google know. But since you are using certain apps, you are using certain things, there is already an induced validation that these types of clustering of customers are on this data sets. The same thing we do. We have almost 48 different profiles of customers. These are the ones who actually make a difference, and they are the ones who require loans in the market. So we do that in a very different manner. Last which we do is the full journey is digital. They get a digital title search in, they get an approval for a loan in 10 minutes, they get a digital title search in another half an hour. There's no manual intervention. And we also do a video credit where we run it through a video credit analyzer, which tells you whether how much of the truth, it's like a truth setup. It tells you what is the quotient of truth in the full conversation, because it takes a lot of data and analyzes and matches it with a certain clustering of information which we have in the past. That makes a lot of difference, because you don't have to create a whole rinka of creating a full team of people going out, visiting, validating, checking, confirming, judgment, all those things are out. We have one data set which says that they are good. The only thing that a person in a company can do, saying that no, I don't agree with it, we can decline it. But if the data set says the customer is not good, he cannot say I think he is good. So it makes a lot of difference. Customer knows he can do it from anywhere. He doesn't have to go to a broker, branch, anywhere. He can just take the mobile, download the app and do it. And that makes a hell of a difference for the customer experience. They don't have to get papers, they don't have to go branch to branch, they don't have to take a day off. So it's all about how easy they find their livelihood to be. If they find the route to livelihood for a housing easy, they will take up that requirement. Today, as we speak, we have, I would say, we get almost some 2,000 to 3,000 leads, customers applying for a loan in a month. We hardly do even 10% of that. That's the amount of demand we have.
Thank you, Dr. Malcolm. I would like to hear from you, Mr. Krishna. Your fund, specifically works in the low-income, not low-income, affordable housing projects, and I would want you to touch upon the sustainability. How much do you focus on sustainability? And when I say sustainability, specifically in terms of the sustainability of the built environment, right from its building to its cradle stage, right? So tomorrow, if I have to dismantle this building, what will happen to the debris and the construction and demolition waste? So do you look at now, given the given the crisis in this space, do you look at construction from that angle? And can you talk a bit more about your work, especially from the sustainability angle?
I think you have raised the issue of debris. I should give you a statistic. Again, depending on the website that you would be going through, the Eco Park where we are from, 60,000 to 125,000 tons of debris was removed over the last 12 years to make the park what it is, a sustainable ecosystem today, which is now attracting all these extreme birds. But now coming back to our, I think I'll come back to how we deal with our debris. The operating word here is affordability, and I think at some level we get confused, maybe not deliberately, but maybe because of too much information flowing between affordable housing and affordable homes. I mean, the house versus the home is where we try to differentiate ourselves. So when we look at it, we play typically in the government-defined MIG space. And the LIG space, we say, is where the government has to straddle into their housing board and everything else. We are doing something with the housing board, but that's for later. What we want to do is, when we provide something, we want to provide a home where families can thrive, and an ecosystem where people can really feel that they are at home and they can live, because affordability as what we adhere to, and this is based on what the government has defined some time back, and sorry to say not many of the other affordable housing funds follow this, is 45 lakhs or 650 square feet, less than 650 square feet and up to 45 lakhs. And unfortunately in a city, especially in metropolis, people are not able to profitably build homes in this thing. So how do we really then give a home? We are looking at co-living structures. So we have two themes. One is the for sale housing, the other one is the rental housing. So in the for sale housing, we have a target of about 5,000 homes on our 700 crore fund. We have not yet committed, we have just about committed a little more than 75% of our fund, and we have done more than 4,000 homes. By the time we end our fund, which we commit the entire fund, which we believe we will do by end of this financial year, we should be tracking more than 6,000 homes there. And in this 5,000, about 25% was supposed to be for rental housing. So the definition of the rental housing, as per the multilaterals, World Bank and ADB are investors, they say that every one house is equal to 4 beds. So from that context, we should be tracking 1,250 to 4, which is about 5,000 beds. As of today, we have committed to more than 20,000 beds. And as I told you, we are still at 70% of our fund. I'll show you a video after this as to how we have done in terms of the rental housing, especially on the working women's hostels. So there are two flavors of working women's hostels, two separate platforms through which we have created. One is a platform which is owned by the state government, the Social Welfare Department, because they have given us the land. And we have funded the entire capex, implemented it, seeded the company. Till about a month back, the entire team was working from our office. So that's the level of handholding that we have been doing. The second one is a joint venture with Tata. I mean, most of you will, as time passes, will hear about Tata Electronics, which is manufacturing the iPhone 15. More than 90% of them are women there. And Tata has given us the land, or actually the land belongs to the state government in which Tata is building up the factory. And some part of it is for the housing. And we have funded the entire equity, or almost the entire equity, for 14,000 bed industrial housing, which comprises mostly of women. 90% of them are women. So these are the two platforms in which we have done. Now, I'm sure you are now going to ask about the sustainability part. The sustainability part is here. We have now, how do we actually do all this at this scale and still try to make it affordable and sustainable at the same time? In fact, we have Prithvi here, she's our sustainability expert. She actually does a lot of hard work for us. Even before we take a look at our project or the numbers, she has to do all the environmental or sustainability assessments, and we come up with a design which is we take most of the sustainable development goal benchmarks and frameworks. For us, we believe everything has to be quantifiable, and nothing can be done unless we quantify and we know what is the impact. I mean, I have some numbers to show the impact, but I think that's digressing. We have done, insofar as our buildings are concerned, all our new buildings are necessarily IFC certified. And that's how we look at the sustainability aspect. Insofar as the working women's hostels that we are doing with the Tatas, 40,000 bed one, it's all done under modular construction, prefab modular construction. We are practically putting up one wing every 3 months. So each wing is about, I think, 13 or 14 crores. I'm sorry if my numbers are a little fudged because too many projects that I would have seen, and I would have only have seen it cursively. But all said and done, this is how we do it. Now coming back to the dismantling, we believe that after doing all this, our buildings would have to last longer than the traditional buildings. But even if we have to do that, being prefabricated, I think the dismantling is not really so difficult. You just, as much as you, it's like blocks. You just, put them as a block and remove them as a block. Yes, it's not that simple or that easy, but definitely it is far more sustainable than the traditional way of construction. So these are some of the things that we are doing. If I may, have about 3 more minutes, I would want to play a video as to what we, because they say picture says 1,000 words. I don't know how many words a video would say and how long that would count me as talking, but if, with all your permission, I would want to just play a small video. Oh, okay, fine.
Sorry to take away from you for a video, but I'm excited to see your video as well. Sorry, yeah. Take the video, I'm really fine.
Sure.
You're not looking at just women at work. You're looking at the faces that will drive tomorrow. They are the faces of progress. பெண்ணாக பிறப்பது மட்டுமே பெருமைக்குரியதல்ல. அத்தகைய பெண் ஒரு சமூகத்தை வழிநடத்துவதாக உயர்ந்து நிற்பதையே நாம் விரும்புகிறோம். ஏன் இந்த நாடும் விரும்பிக் கொண்டிருக்கிறது. Tamil Nadu is the second largest state economy and the most industrialized state in India. It is the hub of manufacturing. Tamil Nadu has employment opportunities for over 2 lakh persons with great scope for women's employment. But there are many challenges faced by women who are moving out of their homes due to employment across the state from districts, small towns and other states. Right now, the supply-demand gap for accommodation is being filled by the private sector, which is not always a viable option for many.
என்னோட நேட்டிவ் வந்து கோயம்புத்தூர். நான் இங்கே சென்னையில் ஹாஸ்டலில் தங்கி ஒர்க் பண்ணிட்டு இருக்கேன். சர்வீஸரோட ஹாஸ்டலில் தண்ணி பிரச்சனை இருக்கிறதுனால காலையில் 6 மணிக்கு எழுந்திரிச்சு லைனில் வெயிட் பண்ணி அப்படி குளிக்கிற மாதிரி தான் இருக்கும். நான் தங்கிட்டு ஹாஸ்டலுக்கும் ஜாபுக்கும் டெய்லியும் ட்ராவலிங் 3 ஹவர்ஸ் பண்ண வேண்டியது இருக்குது. சரி கிட்டவே கிடைக்கும்னு போய் பார்த்தா அது ரொம்ப எக்ஸ்பென்சிவாக இருக்குது. இல்லை நம்ம லோ காஸ்ட்டில் போய் தேடணும்னா அது செக்யூரிட்டியும் இல்லை, ஹைஜீனிக்கும் இல்லை. ஒரு நாள் 3 நாள் ஷார்ட் டேர்மில் தங்குற மாதிரி ஹாஸ்டலில் ஃபெசிலிட்டிஸ் இல்லை. Once we come from work to the space, it doesn't give that home feeling at all.
So this is where we come in. The Tamil Nadu government has pioneered the development of self-sustainable hostels with professional operations under a newly formed company. This initiative is funded by the government and Tamil Nadu Shelter Fund, which invests in affordable housing within the state. To begin with, the company has retrofitted old hostels and also developed new state-of-the-art hostels, providing nearly 1,800 beds across Tamil Nadu. Features include 24/7 security services in shifts, CCTV cameras at appropriate locations, grand master key system biometric entry access for monitoring visitors, online registration process through a dedicated website, dedicated fire safety staircases, differently abled friendly design, entry ramp outside the building for wheelchair access, climate resilient green building with IFC EDGE certification. So what impact will this have on the working women of Tamil Nadu?
கவர்மெண்ட்டே அப்படி ஒரு பிசினஸ் கொண்டு வந்தாங்கன்னா என்னோட செக்யூரிட்டி பக்கம் கவலையே இல்லை. என்னோட வேலையிலையும் நான் ஃபோக்கஸ் பண்ணி அதில் ஒரு உயர்வான இடத்துக்கு போக முடியும். அது இல்லாமல் என்னோட ஊரில் இருக்கிற பேரண்ட்ஸ் என் பொண்ணு எப்படி இருக்காங்கன்னு ஒரு கவலைப்படுவாங்க இல்லையா, அது இல்லாமல் இப்போ செக்யூராக கவர்மெண்ட்டோடைய ஹாஸ்டலில் இருக்கிறதால சேஃபாக ஃபீல் பண்ணுவாங்க.
This facility will be a home away from home and have a positive effect on the mental health of these working women.
So, only 3 points I would like to make. One is, while doing all this, we are still on track to make top quartile returns. There is no compromise on our returns.
Number one, what's the target IRR for these projects?
Just to understand.
Well, anything between 12 to 15%. Maybe
Which is a fair
so it's a top quartile number as I told you. As we speak, in fact, tomorrow World Bank is visiting our hostels. They are one of our investors, and this will be one of the top performing projects within their own portfolio. And number three, and the most important point is when we start saying, or rather, I'll take fourth one. When we start talking about where these kind of facilities are given, it is 120 square feet per bed, and which I think is not something that you have in any of the private sector hostels or any of the hostels that are run by private companies. And fourth one, the affordability. I think that's where we have come to, where at least 40 to 60% cheaper than any hostel which is in that vicinity. And this is something that we do it relentlessly. We've been on it for the last 1.5 years, and we'll be on it for the next 3 years. We should be putting in something like about 20,000 beds at least on the men's hostels. Thank you. I think I've taken a lot of time.
So, as we heard, housing could be for anyone, right? For hostelers also, even a temporary shelter for like 3-4 years. But how we make it more, we have a value proposition attached to it, makes so much of difference. So moving ahead to a little more broader context, I would like to hear more about the investment ecosystem in the housing space, and Belinda, your views on how what are the challenges, and what actually should be in place to mitigate those challenges and make this housing more affordable, sustainable. So, thank you.
Sure, that was an incredible video and really inspiring. So from something from the state government side, we'll move something to the central government side, right? So okay, let's talk about the macro financial system which is supporting the housing. So we see around anywhere between $5 billion to $6 billion in FDI flows every year which support housing in India. The domestic contribution would be around $2 to $3 billion, right? So that's the number that we're talking about. Unfortunately, or the way the industry is being structured, is all of this money is absolutely going into SPVs, which is focusing only on the projects which they are actually investing in. Right? When you start talking about sustainability, a developer needs to build like a solid building block, right, on top of which all the research and entrepreneurs like Shruti can get an opportunity to present themselves, right? Unfortunately, what is happening is all of this money, none of it is going into the entity levels of the developers. All of it is actually going into the SPV levels. So from an investor's perspective, the investors largely focused on saying, is my project being a success or not, rather than saying that is this organization being a long-term sustainable organization, right? That's the key which is happening in terms of when funding is actually going in. So also when investors are looking at affordability, sustainability, green buildings, and Sir spoke about having green bonds, right? So this is so simple when you start looking at it from a commercial lens, right? When you have a commercial building, an IT building, you do a LEED certified building, your tenant who is a Google or a Microsoft or they appreciate sustainability, and they can report it back to their investors in terms of saying, look, we are only present in green certified buildings, right? The same thing, you take the same model and you apply it to a home buyer like each of us. Are we seeing ourselves with the same lens, saying that, look, I stay in a green building? Am I looking at it from like a 30-50 year perspective lens, saying that whatever little extra I paid to the developer for doing a sustainable development, and here's the price of it, right? So that exactly is not happening, and those are some real challenges that we see. So the government But mind you, like, I work for the Swami Fund. The Swami Fund is almost 70% funded by the government of India. If the government of India in 2019 had not stepped in and formed this fund, the entire sector would have been in doldrums, right? So we have managed to rescue so many developers and bring a positive sentiment across the country about development, right? So yes, they and we've been interacting with them quite closely. They do listen. They are reactive about everything that we tell them, right? But then they are the largest, GP or LP of the country, right? I think there are certain things which probably they should think of, right? And this is both for state governments and for the central government, right? And 2-3 key triggers which they have in their hand, right? So let's talk about those triggers. So the first trigger is FAR or FSI, right? How much you can build onto a particular piece of land, right? If you incentivize developers, saying that if you are building a green building or a sustainable building, I am going to give you an additional piece of FSI or FAR, right? That automatically brings the overall cost of a developer down, right? So that's one trigger which the government has in its hand, the state government has in its hand. Another trigger which they have in their hand is property taxes, right? If you start charging differential level of property taxes to greener buildings, that can really grow. Third trigger could be possibly in the form of the premiums that you pay for developers, right? And these premiums are very large, right? So if you qualify for what they call as a sustainable building, you can get a reduction in premiums, right? The fourth one, which I can think about, is GST, right? If you can give like a GST pass back to someone who has built a long-term sustainable building, that again, is. So these are things, which I think can solve a few matters. So just wanted to, add a few things on the Swami impact. So when we entered, we did realize that a lot about sustainability is about design. Like the earlier you entered into it, you can make that much better impact on design. However, we were getting into brownfield projects, right? So we said, hey, look, this is going to get really difficult for us if we now at this stage of the project, start tinkering with the design. Right? So what we said is let's look at everything which is ancillary to this development, right? So we have 500-600 laborers who are actually working in these projects. How do you build a very safe environment for them to work? We work across so many cities. We work across like 25 plus cities. We realized in tier 2, tier 3 cities, the basic understanding of environmental approvals is also not in place, right? So we would go in and someone is doing like a 5 lakh square feet project and he said, hey, you know what, do you need a EC in place? And he's like, what is EC? No one in my city has ever applied for an EC. So just educating them, saying that, look, it's not just about buying land and you start building, right? So running them through that process, running them through what it takes to take care of their own people, own labor. So that's mediums in which we thought we can contribute. The other thing which the government of India really thought about as well is when you have a large fund as big as Swami, you can do very large integrated townships. The same one like you have done in Chennai, right? A lot of it, what you can achieve is simply because of scale. You start doing these smaller, less than 50,000 square feet kind of developments, you will not be able to achieve anything. So you can't get rainwater harvesting, you can't get sewage treatment plants, you can't get all of these in place. So in that way, just having long-term pools of capital in place to solve long-term solutions, that is helpful. And since the government of India took the first step by doing Swami, it's been encouraging. So we've been having a lot of conversations with LPs across the globe now who say, great, if all your state governments, your ERA, your central government come together, you can really make faster development, big impact, and they're quite interested now, right? So I think overall, of course, there are a lot of issues which still need to be sorted out, but few of the things that can be changed. Thanks.
Barinder. I've been told that we are on time, and I also realized from today's discussion that intersection of affordability and sustainability is not a 45-minute discussion, it's an entire day discussion perhaps. I really enjoyed our conversation. I do have follow-up questions for all of you, but unfortunately we do not have time to take those. Probably we can take it offline. We do not have time for questions from the audience as well, right? Okay, thank you very much for joining us.